Hello, this is Andrew Wooster with a movie review. Today we're talking about a movie called I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which is just recently released on Netflix. It's a Netflix original, and it's written and directed by Charlie Kaufman based on a book that he adapted. Not the second time he's adapted anything, if you ever saw the movie Adaptation with Nicolas Cage. And that's really kind of the good jumping off point for the story in general, because if you understand Charlie Kaufman's work, if you've seen Adaptation, if you've seen Being John Malkovich, if you've seen Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind with Jim Carrey, then explaining this movie becomes simpler because you have an idea of how his mind kind of works. And this is a very Charlie Kaufman mind at work movie. The basic premise of it looks to be like a grad school kind of couple that are going into meeting the guy's parents for the first time. And all the way on their journey from the kind of the city more into a farm country where he lives, you have the voiceover of the girl really having doubts about the whole relationship and thinking she's just going to get through this and then she's going to end the relationship and what am I even doing, and just all the internal thoughts, which was really kind of fascinating because you had him having a conversation or talking, and then her having this internal monologue that you had based around what he was saying to her, even though she wasn't saying it directly to him. The dialogue and the way it was presented was very much like a stage play, and it was also a very much, you have to have full concentration and full mindset of it's a challenging movie to watch. It's a rewarding and it's an intellectual movie to watch. I've seen a lot of reviews calling it a psychological horror movie. I wouldn't call it that. I would call it a psychological drama. It's very much in the vein of a movie called, the movie Get Out by Jordan Peele, or a movie I talked about a couple weeks ago called Midsummer. It has that same intellectual psychology drama, horror in a way too, but to me it's more of the drama point of view. Those other two were much more horror takes on things, and they were also much more obvious into what the villain was or what the scary part was. In Get Out, it's white people, and in Midsummer it's the cult that they're walking into, and that's pretty much explained early on and pretty clear, and that's the point of the movie, is to understand that. This isn't really clear what the enemy is, or it's just disturbing in a lot of ways. When you get to the parents' house, the parents are very much like it's strange because you're listening to the dialogue, and it's the first 20 minutes is just them riding in the car talking, and her in her monologue really, and it's fantastic, and it's well done. It's very much like a play, and it's very interesting, and you have to pay attention to it because there's all these subtle little switches and subtle little cues that they give you, and clues all laced in there. So if you're not paying attention, or if you miss a word of dialogue, if you miss a 2-second clip of scenery when they show something, then you're not going to get the full idea of the movie, which is why I say you really have to have a space that you can concentrate. And it's an over 2-hour movie, so you're going to have a space to concentrate in a dark room so you can see everything, because there's parts in this movie where it is barely lit. You can see them in the car, but it is barely lit because they're driving at night through a snowstorm, and it's hard, and you hear the dialogue, but you can't really see them very well, if at all, sometimes. And that's part of the plot and part of the strategy of how it's filmed. But it becomes a challenging watch because of that. So going in, I would say that's something you have to understand. And if you understand Charlie Kaufman, that helps a lot, because okay, that's Charlie Kaufman. At this point, he's been doing this for 25 years. If you're a fan of his, and he has a lot of fans, and he deservingly has a lot of fans, they're going to follow into this movie and love it because it has the same vibe and same idea of the world, or how to explain. He explains the world or his thoughts on different subjects in an extremely unique way. And it's based on a book. It'll be interesting to see how the book talks about the subjects, or how it's structured as well, if he didn't take it and twist it. Like if you ever saw an Adaptation was a book. I think it was an adaptation on a book called The Wild Orchid, which was a story about orchids. And he took that and he ran with it, and he took a whole story within a story, and it really made something totally unique from the book, while at the same time having the book be in the story. His mind he'll be a fascinating person to have a conversation with and just go over things. And this story, as you know, it's called I'm Thinking of Ending Things. And through the girl's point of view, especially through a lot of part of the beginning as they're driving to the parents' house, it's her trying to figure out why she's in the relationship or if she's going to get out of the relationship. And they're very two intelligent persons. Their dialogue on poetry and philosophy and literature is really fascinating to read. And it's them having a conversation without really caring about you as an audience necessarily understanding or getting the references. So the references that I did get and I did understand, and they explain some of the references later on in the story, which you have to pay attention to remember that, so you can kind of connect backwards, but in a way that makes it even a layer to me, because it's like, oh yeah, I understand what they're saying. I understand the metaphor that they're using there, or the context of trying to, because their conversations are about different parts of their lives or different part of the relationships, or just they're talking about abstract concepts that you can, as an audience, relate back to the movie, and about you can project it onto their relationship, even though it's kind of just them having an intellectual conversation about something. And it's very much about love, and it's very much about loneliness, and it's very much about gender roles and identity, and how you kind of get a comfort in somebody, and how you can't say no to somebody, and why you put yourself in positions you do, and how people treat age and the expectations of when you get to certain ages, you should be different places, but also specifically when you get older. And I think that's what, I mean, it's a movie that you can interpret, I think, your own way a lot of times. And for me, it's something, if I watch again, I'm going to understand it a whole lot better. For me, it got to the point where, you know, like I was talking about with what are they fighting against, or what's really the enemy in the story, or what's the big bad of the story. And it really becomes time, which you kind of understand when you get to the parents' house. And their parents they're weird. It's like Texas Chainsaw Massacre weird. Like, you know, the parents in that, the family in that, it's like a couple levels down from there, but that's kind of when I saw them and I saw how they're acting, I'm like, wow, this is just strange. And what's great about it is you put this in the situation where the girl trusts the guy just enough, and you see why she trusts the guy just enough, but you also see her kind of, like you did in Get Out, you see certain things happening that they don't react to as you would normally. But it's okay because of the way it's constructed and the way the story's told, that you understand they're kind of stuck in some place and they're not able to act naturally or normally. And you kind of like, well, what's going to happen here? You can kind of like stuck in a vortex or in this like cycle they can't quite break. So that's really what the story is. And it's at the end of the day, I think it's a story I took away from. It's about time, and it's about love, and about finding love in your time and doing what you can to reach that. There was a part towards the end when it's probably like the last, I'm not really spoiling anything, but it's the last 15, 20 minutes of the show. And it got to a certain part that's kind of the climax and kind of the point of the whole story. And I was thinking about it, and I'm like, this is the Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode. First season Buffy the Vampire Slayer. If you're a fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and you watch this movie and you see this scene, I'm like, you'll be like, I think you'll identify it pretty quickly because it's pretty obvious. It's for maybe second season, but very Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode. And it's almost like, when I saw that, I took it as it's being of a ghost. It's basically a ghost story in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. There's two people trapped in high school, and I'm not giving away by saying that. But if you see the movie, it has that kind of feel. Only it extends beyond that as far as the the ability for these ghosts or these people to be trapped in a certain time, but not necessarily just stayed in that certain place, and being able to move through time and go back and forth because they're not beholden to where they are or where they were, which is, it's interesting. There's a lot I'm sure I didn't get. There's a lot more hidden in that story. It's so layered. Like I said, the dialogue, it leads places, later on in the story, and also the little clips, little scenes of things of them, looking, reflections, or one time they look older than they do the next time, or there's all these little clues, or something that a character is paying attention to for just a little bit longer beat than would be normal in a movie, and clipped all that together to really get something. It's good. So I mean, it'd be, if you like Charlie Kaufman, or if you like a movie that you have to pay attention to, concentrate with, it's a little bit intellectual, so you're going to get more layers of depth if you understand some of the references, or if you can, I mean, I did this when I was younger. I don't do it so much anymore. Something like this is I go figure out the references. I watch it with a little notepad, and I jot down, okay, what's this they're talking about? What's that they're talking about? Figure out the meaning of that. And that's, to me, outside of high school, that was a big part of my education. A big part of how I learned things was through movies like this, and TV shows, or even music. So this is certainly one of those, and it's a Charlie Kaufman is a very interesting way of looking at the world. And if you want to have an interesting way of looking at the world movie that you have to really concentrate for over 2 hours, that has a lot of intellectual parts to it that you might not understand or might not get, but still can feel the weight of it, and kind of, even if you don't fully understand the reference, I think you generally can get the context of the reference. That makes it still enjoyable. So it's called I'm Thinking of Ending Things. It's just on Netflix. Written and directed by Charlie Kaufman. It's an interesting movie. Something I think I would recommend it. If you check off those boxes I spoke about, I would recommend seeing it, because it's definitely it makes you think, and it makes you want to rewatch it, because you're pretty sure that you missed a couple things, and there's a lot of layers and depth that you're gonna pick up more. But I appreciate you sticking with me for about, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 minutes here. My name is Andrew Wooster. Till next time, be good.